Hi guys, hopefully everyone's doing well. I've just finished my first year of university and I thought it would be nice to share some tips, advice, and some lessons that I learned during my first year. I'd like to think of it as if I'm giving advice to the younger me to prepare them for their first year of university. But even if you're not in university, I think some of the things mentioned here are useful for general life as well. So I think the big first step that I would recommend is prioritize getting your life under control. And I would say that friends can come later. This is how I prioritized it, and I know some people do disagree. That's fair enough. A lot of people come to university for the social aspect, but I think that especially if you're moving out and living alone for the first time, it's very important to get accustomed to living alone. And in the first weeks, many people kind of push that aside and just go, they eat out every night, they're with friends every day. And then 2 or 3 months in, December rolls around, everyone's focused on project work, and suddenly you're alone and you don't actually know how to live alone because you never gave yourself time to do that. So I would say prioritize getting your life under control first and then explore social things after you're comfortable being alone. However, building connections is important. I think you should push yourself to be more social and invest time into meeting new people, but you don't necessarily have to be friends with them. You're just building connections so that you can strengthen those connections later on in life. During the first year, there will be hard times, especially if you choose to focus on yourself in the first few months. And these hard times become the most memorable after you get through them. And they're the times when you grow the most, from my experience. I would advise finding a dream of sorts and prioritizing that dream. So, for example, that was creating content and sort of just figuring out how far I can push my mind to focus on my work, how hard I can work, and just optimize things like that in my life. Yours might be perhaps it's performing in a band, or perhaps it is just socializing and seeing how many people you can meet. But finding a goal for that first year and following through with that is very good for providing some direction. This way, when the hard times come around, they're simply a roadblock and you just need to push through them. Failure doesn't equal defeat. It's simply just necessary for growth. You should use this time in your first year to learn about yourself. If you don't know what you want to study or you don't like your course, explore other things, because this is a great time to actually know what you want to do. I chose a course and I wasn't sure if it was right for me. And now that I finished my first year, while the course still isn't ideal, I've been able to explore other aspects of my life, such as creating videos and short films and stuff like that. And so now I can do that in my free time. But I've also recognized what aspects of my course I like, so I can focus on those and not necessarily disregard the others, but put less importance on the other aspects of my course. But in order to find what you actually want to do, you have to allow yourself to be bored. Constant stimulation is an easy way to negate the hardships of your life. If you're stressed or you're depressed or you're lonely, it's easy to just scroll on social media or watch YouTube all day, but you don't actually get anything done and you don't allow your brain time to think about what it wants to do because it's constantly processing things. So allowing yourself to just have time to be bored, just go for a walk, sit in the park, even just sit and stare at a wall for 30 minutes and just run through your thoughts and process them, and you'll learn so much about yourself. As we spoke about building connections, a great way to do this is by picking up new hobbies. In the UK, we have societies. I think they're called clubs in America, but I definitely recommend joining some, even if you don't think you're that interested in it. You can just leave it whenever you want, so you might as well just go to a few sessions and force yourself out of your comfort zone. You might think, oh, I really don't want to do this, but just try it once or twice. It doesn't matter. It's 2 hours of your life, and you learn whether you like it or not. And if you do like it, that's a whole new activity for you to pursue. It could potentially lead into your future, and you also build a ton of connections. And as I've mentioned, that figuring your own life out first is more important than building friendships. It's still very important to have a few close friends. These might be people from your old school or friendships you've had your whole life, but if you don't have that, it is important to find friends that you trust and can open up to during your time at university. Talk to people in your class and be active. Don't sit quietly in the corner. And I know some people are shy or introverted, and that's fine, of course, but it's still a good time to just try something new. And you don't have to maintain it, but once you've met those people the first time, you can just maintain the friendship. It's just the initial introduction that's the hard part. You don't even need to do anything outside of class with these friends. Just having them while you're in class is valuable. Now, with that being said, I know this because I did sit alone in my first semester. I sat at the front of the class, I didn't speak to many people, and I just focused on my own thing. And while I definitely focused better, when I think back, I can't remember anything except for the times when I sat with people. Those are my only memories. I can't recall anything from week seven's lecture, but I can recall the friends that I made and the people I spoke to, and even the conversations I had in those lectures. Now, this kind of depends on your course. If you're studying something more intense, like perhaps computer science, maybe the lectures are more valuable. But if it's something that you can simply review later on, I would say in your first few months, or even the first year as a whole, focusing on building friendships in those lectures is more important than the actual course itself. Especially because in the UK, our first year isn't graded. It's only the second and third year, meaning that first year is good for building connections. Another point to add is that socializing is a hugely energizing behavior. I never thought I would have said this because I'm quite introverted, but I learned that high quality social interaction has such significant value. It allows you to step outside of your mind and just relax for a bit. And this is the only reason why I could focus and produce such high quality work for such a long period of time. Because I would do my work and then I would spend my evenings talking to people, having meaningful conversations, and it would just take my mind off the work, allow me to have a break, and it would just energize me to keep going the next day because I knew that at the end of the day, I was rewarded for that work with these meaningful connections. And just to clarify, the point I'm making is it's important to get your life figured out and build connections later, but I would still say that friendship comes before university actual work in the first year or even the first few months, because being lonely is not a fun experience when you're at university. The reason why I suggest figuring out how to be alone and be comfortable with that is because I think people underestimate how efficient you can be when you work alone. I would say your potential is undeniably reduced when you have other people who are around you distracting you while you're trying to work. Relationships are, of course, important, and I would prioritize them as they have the potential to build your future. But when you don't have anyone on your mind, or there's no one around to distract you, you can fully focus on the work in front of you and have nothing else playing on your mind. Some people may argue this point, and I respect that, but I do believe that if you disagree, it's because you've never actually achieved this level of production. Once you can lock in and focus on work for maybe 4 hours and just produce the highest quality work you've ever made, you'll realize that you can only do that when you're alone in a quiet room with no distractions. So let's have a quick summary. Prioritize getting comfortable being alone, and don't use your first few weeks of university to hide those feelings. Don't hide behind partying every night, eating out every night, constantly being out of your room, because while some people might enjoy that, I feel like it's going to hit you hard when you actually have to be alone. Next, prioritize building relationships and friendships in your classes in the first few weeks or months. The work is important, but you can kind of catch up with it later. But being alone during that period is quite difficult, especially because if you don't build friendships in the first few weeks, people are going to start focusing on work after they've built friendships, and it becomes way harder to make friends. And finally, don't underestimate how much work you can produce and the level that you can produce at when you're free from distractions. Doing work around friends might be more enjoyable, but honestly, if you can sit alone for an hour or two and just focus on your work, you can get so much done and you have so much more time to socialize. And I'll just add a final quick tip. Don't rush into making friends. It's important to make friends early on, but don't become friends with someone just because you don't have anyone else. Because You'll invest a lot of time into those friendships and they might not even be what you're looking for. And by the time you realize that those aren't the people you want to be around, others have already met their friends, meaning that those friendship groups have closed. I'd say keep your options open and build connections, but don't rush into being close friends with someone, especially if it's just because of loneliness and not actually because you enjoy being around them. So those are the lessons I learned, and I hope it's useful. It's definitely catered towards me, especially because I am quite an introverted person. And so I prioritize work over friendships most of the time. It also depends on your course and it depends on what your life priorities are. But if you enjoy the content I make and you can relate to it, I feel like this is probably pretty good advice for you. And of course, I respect other people's opinions and there isn't a right or a wrong. But if I had to teach myself how to go through the first year, this is the advice I would have given myself. So hopefully it provided some value. I appreciate everyone watching, and I'll see you in a future video, hopefully.